I died while the world watched a man fall. The news said Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. And in that instant, my heart shattered like the coffee mug in my hand. I heard the anchor's voice trembling. I felt my chest clamp shut. And somewhere deep inside a question rose like thunder. What is becoming of our souls? My name is Maria Santos, 63. A nurse who has cleaned blood from trembling hands and prayed through long nights. I was only visiting Ohio for a few weeks. A simple Filipino grandmother far from Quezon City. I wanted to bring chocolates to an old friend and FaceTime my grandkids before bedtime. But that morning the television would not stop speaking of rage, and I could taste metal on my tongue. You may think this is just another sad story. But please listen. Because the moment my breath left me, the room did not grow dark. It grew louder, with a silence that swallowed the news, and I felt the ground tilt like a deck in a storm. I remember the sting of hot coffee on my wrist, the crash of painted porcelain, and then, stillness. Ask yourself now, if one bullet can break a nation, what poison has already been drinking our hearts? If a headline can make neighbors glare like enemies, what kind of fire is feeding on our prayers? What kingdom are we building each time we spit cruel words into the air? I used to believe anger was only politics out there, talking heads and distant crowds. But that week, I saw it seep under the door like smoke. I saw it curl around family dinners. I saw it hiding behind pious quotes on social media. It smelled like burned sugar and ash. It left a film on my tongue I could not wash away. When the report said the suspect had a motive, the living room seemed to shrink. The screen glared like a cold moon, and my hands began to tremble without permission. I whispered, "Jesus, help us." And the word Jesus felt heavier than the remote, heavier than the fear, heavier than the walls of the small apartment where I stood. I do not come to argue sides. I come to confess. I felt the same heat in my chest that I once felt watching patients slip from us in the ICU. The same terrible knowledge that something sacred was being torn, not just a body on a sidewalk, but the invisible tissue that binds neighbor to neighbor, child to parent, church to Christ. And it ripped with a sound I could not hear, yet somehow knew. My phone buzzed with messages from Manila, from my daughter Angela, from friends asking if I was safe. The first sensation was not darkness. It was release. The pain vanished like smoke chased by a typhoon wind. I was floating above the floor, and below me lay my own body, lips pale, eyes half open, hands stretched toward the broken pieces of a mug painted by my grandson. I felt no panic, only astonishment, like seeing an old photograph suddenly come alive. The television still barked about the assassination, voices clashing. Every word sounded muffled as though spoken through deep water. But I could see the headlines scrolling red across the screen, and I realized something terrifying. The world did not pause for my death. The arguments continued. The anger marched on, and I was now only a witness. I drifted higher toward the ceiling, the dust on the light fixture sparkling as if sprinkled with silver powder. I could hear my neighbor's radio 2 apartments away. I could hear my daughter's name whispering in my mind. Angela, Angela. But the walls offered no answer. The city offered no answer. And my own body looked abandoned, like a coat carelessly dropped on the floor. Then came the pull. Gentle yet impossible to resist. Like a river current tugging at your ankles. When you stand too long in the shallows. The kitchen shrank. The ceiling stretched thin, and I was drawn into a tunnel. But this tunnel was not fear. It was not blackness. It was woven with light the color of dawn. Threads of pink, of gold, of blue. So soft. It felt like music. The silence was immense. But it was not empty. It was alive. It wrapped me like a blanket, pressing against. The light did not fade. It expanded, and within it the presence of Jesus drew closer, his sorrow still pouring like a tide. yet his eyes burned with something more ancient than stars. He looked at me without moving his lips, and his thought entered me with clarity sharper than sound. "Maria, anak ko, do you see what has become of them?" I tried to speak, but no words left my mouth, only the ache of recognition, for I had already glimpsed the family broken, the church divided, the city trembling, and I knew this was not imagination, it was revelation. A mirror lifted to show the sickness of our age, not just America, not just my homeland Philippines, but the whole world caught in the same fever. He let me feel the weight of his grief, and then he opened it further, like curtains pulled wide, and the vision spread across continents. I saw nations quarreling, alliances snapping like brittle branches, leaders screaming not to guide but to dominate, their tongues dripping contempt as their people echoed the poison in their homes. I saw headlines multiplied into billions of tiny daggers, each one striking hearts unseen. Jesus whispered again, "The enemy does not march in armies as you imagine. The enemy seeps into conversations, into posts, into glances, into the silent resentments you harbor at the dinner table, and by the time you notice, your heart is already a battlefield, and your neighbor is already your foe. Though he never raised a hand against you, I shivered though I had no skin. And he lifted me higher, showing rivers that flowed beneath nations, one clear and radiant, pulsing with forgiveness, the other, dark and swollen, reeking of blood and bitterness. I saw how every hateful word became a drop that swelled the river of blood, how every sneer, every mocking post, every cold shoulder fed that current until it raged like a flood. This is why the bullet strikes," he said. "Not because of politics alone, but because the river of hatred has grown deep enough to carry death into the streets. And unless my children repent, more bullets will fly, more mothers will weep, more nations will fracture. The wound is not political, it is spiritual, and the poison is spreading." The weight of his sorrow pressed me low, and I cried, "Lord, what hope is left? We are drowning. Our children are drowning." He answered with tenderness, "Hope is never gone while love is alive. Hope is never gone while forgiveness is chosen. One heart at a time, one prayer at a time. I am not calling armies, I am calling hearts." The vision changed again. I saw a mother in Manila, slapping her daughter for speaking of another political view. I saw two brothers in New York not speaking for years because of an election. I saw pastors in different countries using pulpits to mock each other instead of lifting the cross. And shadows feasted at every scene, drinking rage as if it were wine. He said, "They ask me for justice while sharpening their knives. They ask me for blessing while cursing their neighbors. They invoke my name but carry not my heart. They march for kingdoms that will turn to dust, while neglecting the kingdom that has no end. My children are perishing because they confuse earthly victory with heavenly triumph." I wanted to close my eyes, but the vision would not release me. I saw marketplaces where neighbors no longer trusted neighbors, shopkeepers glaring at customers, suspicion coating every exchange. I saw schools where children repeated the bitterness of their parents, their laughter poisoned by politics they barely understood. And Jesus sighed through my soul. This is the inheritance of hatred. It multiplies until innocence itself is broken. The light around him throbbed like a heartbeat, and his thought grew stern, though never unkind. "Maria, you must tell them. The world is not dying from lack of information. It is dying from lack of love. Screens feed them rage. Voices feed them fear. And they devour it gladly, forgetting the bread of life, forgetting the living water, forgetting me." I wept again, shaking in the weight of his command. "How can they listen, Lord?" I bowed low in the weight of his presence, trembling, and I asked without sound, "Why me, Lord? Why would you reveal this to me? I am no prophet. I am no leader. I am only Maria Santos, a retired nurse, a grandmother who still forgets where she put her glasses, Why not send this vision to presidents or preachers? His answer came not with thunder but with warmth. Maria, Anak ko, precisely because you are ordinary, precisely because you carry no throne, my message will not be chained to politics or pride. My truth will shine clearer through the life of one who has lived simply, who has held the hands of the sick, who has prayed quietly at the kitchen sink. I choose those who know love in small places. I felt his gaze pierce deeper, like light finding cracks in stone. And he showed me my daughter Angela holding her children. He showed me Miguel and Rosa laughing in the garden. And he whispered, "This is your pulpit. This is your stage. Not marble steps or grand cathedrals, but the living room, the dinner table, the neighborhood corner. If love cannot live there, it cannot live anywhere." Still I trembled. Lord, the world is vast. The sickness is everywhere. What can one voice do against oceans of hatred? He replied, "Oceans are made of drops. Rivers of poison can be turned by streams of clean water. Never despise the power of one prayer, one act of mercy, one witness who speaks with tears instead of weapons." Then he leaned closer, his presence like sunlight pressing against my chest. "Maria, I did not bring you here by accident. Your death was not random. I allowed you to taste eternity so that you would carry a mission back to the living. You must tell them what you saw. You must remind them that heaven is real, that I am weeping for their division, and that only love will heal their land." My heart shook with both awe and fear, for I knew this calling would not be easy. Some would mock, some would twist my words, some would call me foolish, but I could not resist his command. His love was too vast, his sorrow too urgent, and I whispered in reply, "Lord, if you send me back, I will speak, I will testify, even if my voice shakes, even if I am small." He smiled then, a smile so tender, it melted the weight of eternity into a single embrace. "My dear child, do not fear their faces. I am with you always. My power is made perfect in weakness. Let them see your tears. Let them hear your trembling. For through you I will speak, and my spirit will move." And in that moment I understood. My life was never about career or recognition. It was about this mission, to carry a message that could not be silenced, a message that did not belong to me, but to the one who saved me. And I knew I would return, not because I wanted to, but because love demanded it, because he asked it. The light around Jesus flickered like the first rays of dawn, gentle and powerful at once. But it was the depth of his sorrow that continued to shape everything. It was in his eyes, it was in the space around him, and it was in every word. He spoke, each one a prayer, each one a plea. I stood before him, feeling as small as a grain of sand. But his presence did not diminish me. It expanded me. I felt like my soul was breathing for the first time, and in that breath I began to understand the weight of the division I had witnessed, not just in the world around me, but in my own heart. He showed me a family dinner table, so ordinary, so Filipino. I saw a mother stirring a pot of rice, a father setting down a plate of fish, a son texting on his phone, his face hard, a daughter sipping her drink in silence. And the mother's heart was breaking, for they had forgotten the gift of conversation. They had forgotten the warmth of simply being present. I saw how their hearts had hardened without them even knowing it. How every conversation, every glance, had turned into a weapon, and how they spoke not to understand, but to win, to defeat, and the silence at the table grew heavier, thicker with each passing day, until it was no longer a meal. It was a battlefield. And then Jesus whispered into my heart, "The enemy has already won when you no longer see each other's hearts. When you look into each other's eyes and see only labels, only sides, only threats, not children of God, not family, but enemies." And I understood then that division is not just political. It is spiritual. It is personal. It is everywhere. Next, he showed me a church, and my heart broke as I saw a congregation torn, their prayers no longer uniting them, but dividing them, one side holding up a flag, the other side clutching a cross, and Jesus was not there. His name was invoked, but his presence was not felt. For they had chosen to fight for the kingdoms of this world, and not the kingdom of heaven. He spoke again, the words so clear in my mind. They used my name, but they did not carry my heart. They held up my image, but they did not follow my way. They worshipped at my feet, but they refused to love their neighbor. And I saw the pain of his broken heart as he looked at them. Then the vision shifted again. And I saw the streets of a city, not one specific place, but all cities. And I saw people walking past each other with their heads down, their eyes filled with suspicion, their minds locked into one thought: what side are you on? Who do you follow? And Jesus showed me how the darkness clung to them, like smoke rising from a fire, cold and thick. This darkness was not the stuff of nightmares. It was not a creature with claws. It was the poison of hatred, feeding on fear, feeding on anger, feeding on suspicion. It made everything sharp. It made everything suspicious. It twisted simple kindness into a weapon. And I saw how the enemy did not need to strike with force. He simply needed to sow division and let the people tear themselves apart. I saw families, once close, now split apart by words and beliefs that didn't matter. I saw friendships shattered over who voted for whom, and I saw neighbors turn away from each other because of an opinion they hadn't even discussed, because the darkness was whispering in their ears, telling them to be afraid, telling them to fight. And in every place where love should have lived, hatred had taken root. But in the stillness of Jesus' presence, I saw something different. I saw the river of light, a stream that flowed with peace, with forgiveness, with mercy. And I felt the call to drink from that river, to pour it into every empty vessel I encountered. He showed me that the only way to heal was not through victory over the other side, but through surrender, not through winning arguments, but through offering grace, through seeing each other as children of God, not enemies, through remembering the cross, not the flag, through loving the person before you, not the ideology they carry. And I understood, in that moment, that love was not a passive thing. It was not just a feeling. It was an active choice, a deliberate action. It was the only force strong enough to counter the darkness, the only power that could turn the river of blood back into living water. It was the only thing that could heal a broken world. The vision faded, and I stood there, breathless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had seen, yet filled with a strange peace, a peace that came not from knowing the answers, but from knowing the one who holds. The pull came suddenly, as if the light itself began to withdraw. I felt it first as a gentle tug, then as a rushing wind, and the peace that had wrapped me like a blanket began to unravel. I cried out, "No, Lord, please let me stay. I am home here. I am whole here. I do not want to return to the noise, to the anger, to the pain." But his voice came tender and strong. "Maria, my child, your work is not finished. You must go back. You must tell them what you have seen. You must carry this message into the darkness, for only through your witness will some begin to understand." And though it broke my soul, I knew I had no choice. Love demanded my return. The silence shattered into a roar, like waves crashing against cliffs. I felt myself falling backward, faster and faster, the light receding, his presence still holding me but growing fainter. And then came the crushing weight in my chest, sharp, burning, unbearable, as though an elephant pressed down upon me. I gasped, but no air came, only fire, only glass in my lungs. I heard a scream pierce through the chaos. It was Angela, my daughter, her voice frantic, desperate. "Mom, you are breathing. Mom, come back." I felt hands shaking me, pressing against me, voices shouting codes and commands, and the beeping of machines hammering into my ears. Not the music of heaven, but the noise of man's struggle against death. My eyes flew open, not to light that healed, but to fluorescent glare. Hard, cold, merciless. I saw faces above me, doctors, nurses, astonished, sweat dripping, their eyes wide as if they had seen a ghost. And I realized they had, for by all accounts I was gone. For more than 30 minutes I was clinically dead. Yet here I was breathing again. I tried to speak, but only a ragged croak came out. Angela's tears fell on my hand as she held me close. "Mom, we thought we lost you. We thought you were gone forever." And I wept too, but not from joy of survival. I wept because I had left the presence of my Lord. I had tasted eternity, and now was thrust back into the brokenness of earth. The doctor, a young man with kind eyes, shook his head in disbelief. "Mrs. Santos, you should not be here. Your brain should be damaged. Your body should not recover. But here you are, awake, alert, speaking. It is a miracle." And I wanted to tell him, "Yes, it is, but not the kind you think. It is not science that brought me back. It is mercy. It is mission." In that moment I felt the deep ache of being torn from heaven, a homesickness more powerful than any I had known. Yet beneath it was a thread of peace, the whisper of Jesus still echoing in my spirit. "I am with you always. Go back and tell them to love." And though the pain in my chest was sharp, though the noise of machines was overwhelming, his words steadied me. I closed my eyes, letting tears fall. Not because I wished to escape again, but because I knew the path ahead would not be easy. I would be mocked, doubted, dismissed. Yet I had seen what I had seen. I had heard what I had heard, and no ridicule could erase the truth. Heaven is real. Jesus is weeping. And love is the only cure for the sickness of our world. I lay in that hospital bed with wires across my chest, my daughter still clutching my hand, tears drying on her cheeks, and all I could think was how heavy the world felt compared to the weightless peace I had just left. But as I listened to the beeping machines and the muffled voices outside my curtain, I knew my mission was not to complain but to testify. So now I speak to you. Not as a nurse. Not as a grandmother. Not even as a survivor. I speak to you as a witness. Because I saw the heart of Jesus breaking. I felt his sorrow for us. And I cannot stay silent. Heaven is real. His presence is real. And his tears are real. Please listen, my brothers and sisters. Every angry word you type online, every harsh judgment you whisper about your neighbor, every cold stare you give to someone who votes differently, it is all feeding that river of blood I was shown. It is all nourishing the shadows that feast on division. And I beg you in the name of Christ, stop pouring poison into the waters. I know the anger feels righteous. I know it feels powerful. But I tell you it is a trap. I saw the enemy smiling when men wrote curses on their screens. I saw him swelling fat when women turned their backs on each other. Hatred does not heal. Hatred does not protect. It only destroys. And it will leave your family in ruins if you allow it into your home. Instead, choose love. Not as a slogan, not as a decoration on a wall, but as a choice made every day. Choose love when your spouse says something cruel. Choose love when your child rebels. Choose love when your neighbor gossips. Choose love when the news tempts you to despise. Choose it, because it is the only power strong enough to heal what is broken. I am not asking you to pretend evil does not exist. I am asking you to fight it the way Jesus commanded. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who wound you. Forgive before bitterness takes root, because forgiveness is the weapon the darkness cannot steal. Mercy is the shield that stops the arrows. Love is the light that the shadows cannot stand. When you sit at your dinner table, remember what I saw. A family broken by politics. A mother silently dying inside. A father shouting. A son clenching fists. Do not let that become your story. Turn off the screen. Hold hands. Pray together. And look into each other's eyes. Until you remember that you belong to each other. Not to a party. Not to a side. But to a family. When you gather in church, remember what I saw. Believers glaring across an aisle, using prayers like weapons. Do not let that happen among you. Remember that Jesus is not divided. His cross is not partisan. His love is not selective. If you raise his name but abandon his heart, your prayers are noise. But if you carry his heart, even silence becomes worship. And when you walk the streets of your city, when you scroll through your phone, remember the shadows I saw, clinging to faces, whispering suspicion. Do not give them room. Resist them by kindness, by speaking peace, by blessing strangers, by refusing to forward the poison. For every time you choose light over darkness, you starve the enemy and strengthen heaven's song. I wept when I returned, not because I feared death, but because I feared we are forgetting how to live as children of God. And so I say to you with all the love in my heart, do not wait until it is too late. Do not wait until your family fractures. Do not wait until your community collapses. Begin today. Begin now. With one act of mercy, one word of grace, one prayer of love. My dear friends, I am not special. So now I stand before you with nothing to offer but the truth. I am not a politician. I am not a preacher. I am only a grandmother from the Philippines who died on her kitchen floor and was sent back by the mercy of Jesus. And if you forget everything else I say, remember this. His heart is breaking for us, but his love has not ended. The visions I saw were not just warnings, they were invitations. Invitations to turn, to repent, to awaken, to choose life instead of death, unity instead of division, mercy instead of vengeance, and love instead of hate. The time is short. The sickness is spreading, but hope remains if we will humble ourselves and call on his name. I urge you, brothers and sisters, gather your families, Kneel beside your beds. Lift your voices in prayer. Not for victory over others, but for healing of your own hearts. Pray for your enemies. Pray for your leaders. Pray for the strangers whose names you will never know. And let every prayer be a drop of living water poured into the poisoned river. Do not underestimate the power of small things. One prayer whispered in faith. One hand reaching out in forgiveness. One moment of silence where you refuse to argue. These are seeds of revival. These are sparks of light. And when multiplied across homes, across churches, across nations, they will push back the darkness. They will heal the land. I tell you with all the urgency of my soul, heaven is real. Hell is real. Eternity is not a story to comfort children. It is the destiny of every soul. And the choices we make now echo forever. Do not waste your life feeding shadows. Do not waste your breath on curses. Do not waste your heart on division. Choose the eternal. Choose the way of Christ. And so I ask you, as a sister, as a mother, as a grandmother, will you wake up? Will you stop fighting battles that do not matter? Will you stop pouring blood into the river? Will you instead pour love, pour mercy, pour forgiveness? Because this is not only about your neighbor, this is about your soul. This is about the future of your children. This is about eternity. I invite you now to bow your head. Even where you are, whisper a prayer. Lord Jesus, forgive me. Lord, heal my heart. Lord, teach me to love. For these are the prayers that move mountains. These are the prayers that silence demons. These are the prayers that bring heaven near. Do not wait for tomorrow. Do it now. For now is the day of mercy, and when you rise from that prayer, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends. Share it with those who will laugh at you. Because the world is starving for truth, and even if they mock, even if they scoff, your witness will plant seeds that heaven can water. Your testimony may be the spark that saves another soul. So I leave you with this final call. Love as if it is the only thing that matters. Because it is. Forgive as if eternity depends on it. Because it does. And pray as if heaven is listening. Because it is. The time is now. The choice is yours. And the Lord is waiting. Arms open. Tears in his eyes. Ready to heal. Ready to forgive. Ready to love.